Hello, this is Dan with Veterans for Peace Forum. I want to welcome you to the program. Veterans for Peace Forum comes on the fourth Saturday of every month. We have an interesting show for you today. I'm kind of in one of those moods in which I've been so exhausted from so many different events that have been going on. Just recently I was at an event for Healthcare for All. It was the Inner City Blues Festival about 3 weeks ago. Another event Friday before last was I went to Pacific University to listen to one of those iconic speakers from the 60s and 70s, Angela Davis. It was an incredible opportunity to listen to her and continuing to work on the issue of reforming prisons or working towards the abolition of prisons. And she also mentioned the idea that immigration officials are in the business of prisons anymore, and that we have to address the issues of ICE, basically our immigration reforms that are in the business of putting people into keeping those places filled for their profits. The other is that there are a number of anniversaries coming up, and she said that one of the important things was to remember that, you know, there's a 50th anniversary of this, a 100th anniversary of that, another anniversary of this, and that all of these things have a real meaning, and a lot of people, we need to talk about those and celebrate them, but to find out why they were so important. And they're all interconnected because they're about the struggles that people were going through at that time. For me, as a veteran, a combat veteran of Vietnam in 1968, a person who was affected by Agent Orange and traumatized by the war, and was only there a brief time. My brother, who was just a year younger than me, also served in the same company and platoon in Vietnam. I was shipped out after about 3 months while he continued to be there, was involved in an operation that left about 11 people alive, and he came home in a straitjacket. So, you know, these are very, very hard issues for veterans to deal with, but one of the things that affects us all is that we begin to see that war is a tragedy, not just for our veterans, but for the people in the countries in which we are there, supposedly to liberate, when actually the people are in the business of liberating themselves. And so that's just one way of looking at things. There's a book out that I wanted to talk about, which is, it's called Hard Hat, Hippies, and Hawks. It's about the Vietnam anti-war movement and the Myth and Memory by Penny Lewis. A friend of mine, I heard about this on KBOO radio from Marvin Simmons, that does a veterans program on KBOO in the mornings. And after listening to the interview, I decided that I better pick up the book. And it was fortunate because I've been trying to find out. I came from a working class family. Came from a poor neighborhood. My father was on the rise and from a bartender to becoming a bar owner. But in between that time, I left before he had become that. And because I didn't see any future. I didn't see a way for me to get past the class that I had grown up in, and I wanted to go to college. And although the draft was out there, I decided that, you know, I didn't want somebody telling me what to do. I thought, well, I'll enlist. Of course, I had not much of an education, so what happens to me? I am appointed, my assignment is to become a rapid killer in the Marines. I was a machine gunner. I had to be, I had to grunt through the jungles with a machine gun on my shoulder and a squad of people supporting me. Fortunately enough, I didn't ever have to fire my weapon, I think. And that is a problem that happens. There's a loss of memory about certain parts of Vietnam after an operation. And I remember that on this one operation, we came to a spot where basically there was a mutiny in the field. We refused to go any further. Our sergeant, I've told this story a few times, but our sergeant, one of the first guys I met, was ordered to go down this path, and we were to follow. and he hit a mine and was killed. Nobody would move from then on. They couldn't get us to move, so they called in a major or colonel or general, I can't remember, he flew in on a helicopter, gave a pep talk, ordered us to go, and everybody said, F you, you know. And so he knew there was nothing he could get people to do, and he decided that he was going to bring in hot chow and food to the middle of the field. And in that process, he took that body bag out while we had food and beer out in the middle of this field. And the next day we had to go into this village, and I remember going through the rice paddies, and I would hear somebody was walking on the dike, and they hit a mine. You hear another explosion and another one and a scream. And then it came to a point when I got on land, there was a booby trap, one after booby trap after booby trap. And I just remember the explosions and the screams, and then my memory just fades from there. And all I can remember is that somewhere along the line, a convoy came to pick us up. We got on the back of the trucks. Seemed like we only drove 5 miles back, and we'd ran out of food and stuff out in the jungle. And I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. Many years later, and this is what happens to people, as the Gulf War came, started triggering these flashbacks, and the war became more and more hard on me as we continue to be involved in these conflicts. And all of a sudden I got this feeling, you know, that I was telling this story that I'd never fired my weapon, and my body started shaking. I almost fell down, and I got this terrible feeling that maybe we massacred the people in that village. And I cannot tell you whether we did or we didn't, or if they were gone, because all those booby traps were there. But just the very fear of it has upset my whole psyche, my whole being. And so that's one of those stories, which are many, that happen in just a short period of time. I know a young man who's an Iraq vet who, on his 5th day in Iraq, was hit and paralyzed, and is in very serious. I mean, he can't even control his body temperature. There's a movie made out of his story by Phil Donahue and another director, I can't remember her name right now, called Body of War. It's something people should pick up. But what's good about this book, it talks about how people often thought of the hard hats as people who were so conservative from the blue collar workers that they went. In New York, there was a case where a bunch of these hard hats beat up a bunch of peace protesters. But that was an anomaly, and very much the thing that's perpetrated the idea that the working class people were always pro-war in these conditions. But she talks about the memory of history and how we deal with these issues. And that what's important about it, she starts talking about how the African-American community that was fighting for civil rights, and how the Chicano groups were creating Mecha, the Brown Berets, etc., across the country, and were dealing with their own identities, but were actively involved in the anti-war movement and were speaking out. The Chicano movement was and somewhat more more against the war, very active against it, so these histories are not known, and I think we need to know those. One of the things that's important, I think, is, and this is why we have our guests here, is that we're talking about people who come to a position of conscientious objection, whether while serving or after serving. They consciously resist to say that they will no longer participate in a war. And what I like here is, the title of sort of this program is Words That Burn. And I have a few guests here tonight. First half, we're going to kind of deal with Cindy Williams Gutierrez, who's a poet, dramatist, who draws her inspiration from silent and silenced voices of history, and we were just talking about that. And I want Cindy to kind of tell us a little bit about what this Words That Burn is, and Frank Delgado, a prose writer, and about his father's experience. You write about your father's experiences in World War II as a Chicano Marine. So, also being a Marine, we have a lot in common. You also, I saw that you helped establish a chapter of Mecha.
Right.
And I was involved with helping creating Mecha at Portland State University. And one of my friends, who a hero to me, Andreas Vargas, was instrumental of organizing people at Portland State for Chicano movement. Another friend, Juan Mayor, who was instrumental in forming statewide Mecha here in Portland. We were all close with a number of group of people. I was asked to become involved because I founded a student group at Portland State, and we organized together to bring Mecha, and then we also fought for a Latino studies program. And so I just felt, some camaraderie there. And as an artist, I've been around musicians and theater, and I'm a visual artist. I paint and draw, and so those things are always of interest to me, because art has a way of speaking to people when news and facts don't. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell us a little about where this comes from, because we know it's about William Stafford, right?
Mm-hmm,
so can you tell us who he was and what this was about and how you came to this?
Sure. Well, William Stafford is a renowned poet of national renown who was born in Kansas but spent 30 years here in Portland. He taught at Lewis and Clark and lived in Lake Oswego. And he was the poet laureate of Oregon for 15 years, and of course was a conscientious objector in World War II. And a pacifist all of his life. So when Kim Stafford, his son, wanted to do something to celebrate William Stafford's centennial, the interesting thing is William Stafford was born in 1914, mm-hmm. Which of course had has a lot of meaning with respect to World War I, and might have actually influenced his feelings about World War II. Mm-hmm. So Kim started a centennial committee 2 years ago and invited me to be on it. And years ago, when I was teaching in high schools, I would take in William Stafford's poetry and Lawson and Inada's poetry, because I wanted our youth to know about Oregon's literary legacy. And Lawson and Inada, a Japanese-American poet from Fresno originally, succeeded William Stafford as poet laureate. He lives in the Medford area and taught at Southern Oregon University. But what fascinated me was that during World War II, they were both in camps for very different reasons. William Stafford was about 28 when he was in a civilian public service camp, or more than one, in Arkansas and in Southern California, whereas Lawson was about 4 years old when he was taken to an internment camp, Japanese-American internment camp, with his family. And I thought, kids need to know about this. And so I took in some of a poem from each of them, actually, and had the kids write in response a poem of reconciliation. They had to think about a stranger or an enemy in mm-hmm. their lives and write a letter to that person. And in response, they had to write back in the voice of the stranger or the enemy to themselves. So I was very moved by this, and so I told Kim, I really want to put Stafford and Inada in conversation. And then I took this idea to a Porteños meeting, because Frank and I and Joaquin, the folks that you'll see today, all of us are members of Los Porteños, Portland's Latino Writers Collective. And I said, I'm thinking of doing this. And Frank said, you ever heard of Guy Gabaldon? And he had all kinds of things to say about Guy Gabaldon as a Chicano Marine. I thought, oh my God, that's the missing piece. I'll let him tell you about him. But so the idea of Words That Burn is to have this dramatic work that shares in monologue, right, what William Stafford, conscientious objector, Lawson and Inada, Japanese-American internee, and Guy Gabaldon, a Chicano Marine who has a very, very unique experience, to kind of juxtapose their experiences in their own words. So it was a matter of researching the poetry and prose of Inada and Stafford, and then researching interviews and documentaries made about Gabaldon, so that they're really telling their own stories. Mm-hmm. So that's the impulse behind it.
Yeah, and I should say, too, I want to recognize somebody who put me sort of in touch with this whole project, which was Olga Sanchez.
Yes.
I had worked with her before in the past on on a play that she had put forward, Eliot's Fugue. And a few years before that, I think we were all in connection with the groups of people that I helped organize with centennial birthday of Pablo Neruda.
Oh.
So, we have all of these connections, and so it was really nice that she put me onto this. And that was over a year ago. She was telling me this was going to be coming, and then seeing you at PCC when you were doing a little excerpt of this stuff there on the campus, and us showing up there, and that's how we met and began this process to ask you to come on this program. And I really I was so glad that Olga had contacted me, because I think it's so important to get this out to people.
Well, just along those lines, so that people know that the performances actually will happen at Milagro Theatre, and so it is part of Luna Nueva, the Luna Nueva Festival, which celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month, and Olga's the producer for the Luna Nueva Festival, so we're really thrilled to be part of that.
That's September 25th to the 28th?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So we're part of that, and also part of the Centennial celebrating William Stafford.
Oh, that's great. So, Frank, tell me a little bit more about your involvement here.
Well, I was writing a story about my father's experience in the war. He was in the Navy, not the Marines, and he drove the landing barges that dropped the Marines off on the beaches. And I remember him always talking about the Marianas and about Saipan and things like that, but I never paid attention. Then, as you get older, you kind of says, well, things start coming back, filling in, and then you kind of say, well, the pieces are starting to fit in. So then I started researching what he went through, and then that's when Cindy was talking about doing this thing with Inada and Stafford, and I said, well, what about Guy Gabaldon? And I figured he would give a different perspective, because the other two were like Lawson, he couldn't be anti-war because he was interned and he was just like 9 years old.
Right.
So, but I'm sure he wasn't too happy with it. And Stafford, yes, he was, and he paid a price, paid a dear price. But I kind of I said, well, maybe somebody who was in the war, what was their perspective? How would they look at it? And that's where he came in. And it's funny because I told several people about him, and they said, who's he? And then I told them what he did. And then they told me they didn't believe me. And then I says, Google it. So we Googled it, and I showed it to them, and they said, oh, okay. And that's it. They walked away. And they tell me, how did he do it? How did he do it? And I couldn't give them a definitive answer how he did it. Okay. Then other things came up about how he was awarded 2 medals. And yet they were struggling to give him the 3rd medal, which they never did. And so that was kind of controversial. So I thought he'd be good in the mix, because he would round us out from the other perspective, somebody who they were shooting at and decided not to, shoot back.
Right.
Or to try a different way.
That is, I've heard that from a lot of people, even in this war. I'm trying to think of the name of this young man who came to Portland. He was an Iraq veteran, Chicano, who actually was undocumented and went to battle and was a medic. And he was sent over there and was told that he had to carry a rifle, and he refused to. And they ordered him to, so he wouldn't load it. And he finally got out as a conscientious objector, but I mean, they went across the country. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now, but he's just an extraordinary story of people, and I've heard other people who said they refuse to carry their gun anymore.
But see, but for me, sort of from the perspective of a playwright, I find him a fascinating character, because he did kill, I mean, the subtitle of his memoirs, I Killed 33. He did kill 33 if they were shooting at him.
Right.
But he went off by himself, to try to negotiate in Japanese,
Right.
And ended up bringing in hundreds of civilians and soldiers at the same time. So as you said, he found a different way, and yet he did defend himself.
Right.
But what was so, I mean, I'm sure you know from the Marines, what really fascinated me was, it's my understanding, it's one for all and all for one, and for him to go off by himself like a maverick
Right.
is just phenomenal.
Yes,
you
it
know?
is. It is.
It is. I mean, I think he was even threatened with court martial, but because he had results, they said, we'll just let him do what he's doing. That, you know.
Well, that is, yes, very extraordinary, and that's why the story is so important to tell. You know, there's, it reminded me when I was listening to the play and I went home and I was watching television. They, you know, they have a lot of war movies on all the time, but Sergeant York, you know, you remember that?
Yes.
I mean, here's this guy
Yeah.
from a little Appalachian community who didn't want to go to war in the first place. He's talked in that he has to go. He goes. But he's a hunter. He can shoot turkeys, you know. and he ends up being the guy who actually killed a lot of people. But and again, always when you're in a battle, you didn't think about politics one side or the other. You're defending yourself and defending the lives of the people around you. On both sides, that happens. But his main thing was to get around, and he captured all of these people and brought them in. He would rather capture than kill.
Interesting.
And he maintained his philosophy of being conscious against the war, even though he had to fight and those things. So I had that first image when you were talking about him. You know, that came back to me in my mind. Very interesting story. So tell us more about the whole play and how this is coming about.
Right. Well, I think one thing that your viewers may find interesting is that Gabaldon was a Latino kid, a Chicano kid, right, from Boyle Heights, and but he ended up spending a lot of time with his best friends, Lyle and Lane Nakano. And so that's another thing that I think is really fascinating, that here's a kid who grows up practically, well, living, right, at the Nakano household. They become his foster family at age 12. And so this is a person who feels that this Japanese-American family is part of his family, and then volunteers for the war and ends up fighting in the Pacific Theater. And I just can't imagine, you know, you talked about some of the complexity of your feelings in retrospect. I just can't imagine the complexity of his feelings in the moment, you know, because of this cultural connection that he had. So anyway, like I said, he really fascinates me because he makes the cultural connection with Lawson, and yet he also is finding a different way to fight. So there is kind of some tension with Stafford, but also some, you know, kind of an alliance with him by the same token. So what's happening is we're going to have a sneak preview on Monday. We've been invited by several libraries ever since I saw you at PCC. And so we'll be at the Garden Home Recreation Center. It's co-sponsored by the Garden Home and West Slope libraries, and that's on Monday at 6 o'clock. And we'll do an excerpt of the show and have a conversation with the audience, and I'll talk a little bit more about the artistic impulse behind it and read some of those poems that those kids wrote about reconciliation. So.
Well, do you have one of those poems?
I do.
Would you read one of those? I would love to have that.
Okay.
And
all right. I will read it anonymously to protect the privacy of the youth. But this was a freshman. This was a freshman. This was after we studied a poem by Lawson called Poems of a Mache Camp, where he's talking about playing with the kids on the other side of the fence, you know, while he's in the camp, right? And then a poem by Stafford called Monument, I think it's called To the Unknown Enemy, is the whole idea of erecting a monument for the enemy in order to actually spend time thinking about what the enemy's life actually is like. So this is how the freshman responded. Why? 1. Why do you attack people? Why do you kill others? Why do you steal? Did I do something wrong? Did I hurt you in some way? We both have lives. We both die at one point. Why rush it for someone else? 2. I kill because of my crew. I kill to survive. I kill because of the code. We all die at one point. Why not rush it? If I die for the crew. It's sad, but it is true. Stay in school.
Wow.
And that kid is writing back to himself.
That's right.
Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. I love that.
I was just blown
What a
away.
great project you had there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, Frank, what books have you been writing then on your
Well, I just like a short excerpt of my dad's experience, and Shea,
Yeah,
little sample.
yeah,
Oh.
please.
Okay. War is a very personal experience, which few, if any, who have actually gone through would want to share with loved ones, let alone a stranger. But sometimes, in unguarded moments, the memories leach out the cruelty, piece by piece, and find a voice. Most of the time, we accept war as a bad experience, something we would rather not discuss. Yet there is a sense of pride in a family member going to war and doing the unspeakable, killing another human being. Kiko Delgado, my father, never claimed to be a war hero, if there is such a thing. He just wanted to live. Many times as a child while watching John Wayne war movies, my father would enter the room and tell the four of us that only crazy or stupid men would want to go to war, would charge a machine gun nest or throw themselves on a grenade. He would then change the channel. We looked up at him silently thinking, yeah, Dad, but you're not John Wayne. Throughout the years, I heard small pieces of my father's life in the Navy from him and other relatives. On occasion, my father would talk about the boot camp experience and his interaction with drill instructors. The stories were mundane, normal, funny, sometimes sad, but he never spoke about the human struggle to stay alive. I took his memories as boring history, not the things war movies are made of.
Wow.
Wow.
Heavy. I like to read more myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that going to be a part of the play also, or is that going to be?
No, but we read, Los Porteños read for Day of the Dead every year at Milagro and a variety of other times, and so that's how we get our workout. We had a Noche de Neruda also at Literary Arts and also at the Miracles, so yeah, hopefully there'll be another opportunity to do that. What will be part of it, you were asking me how it was all coming together, is we are going to have several exhibitions, which actually you may find interesting. Jim Lomason.
Who's a good friend.
Yeah, you know him?
yeah.
Okay. So he's been collecting oral histories and
Right.
photographs by veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's called, his exhibit is called Exit Wounds.
Yes,
So
I've
those
seen
will be hanging in the cafe at the Milagro so people can interact with them. Sometimes, he superimposes some of the stories on the
Right.
photos. Then, in what they call the elbow room between the cafe and the Zócalo, he has another exhibit called What We Carried,
What We Carried.
Fragments of the Cradle of Civilization. And these are just really straight-on photographs of something that an Iraqi refugee carried.
Yeah.
And then they create these incredible collages. I don't know if you've seen
I've seen them both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very, very good.
Yeah, so Thursday night when we open, one of the members of Los Porteños will be interviewing him as a pre-show event. And then we'll have a Mexican reception after that. So that's Thursday. And then Friday, after the show, we have a panel called In Their Son's Words. Kim Stafford, Miles Inada, and Guy Gabaldon Jr. is coming all the way from Florida. And he was a Marine in Vietnam. And that's a whole nother story. So they will be speaking because actually he admitted to me that Guy was against the Vietnam War. But he still thought his son should go. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. Saturday night, we're going to have this happening in the Zócalo, is the big space at the Miracle, communal space. There will be an art installation by Yukio Kawano of life-size replicas of Fat Man and Little Boy.
Oh, I've seen that.
You've seen those.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Incredible, made out of kimono fabric, and there will be a buto dancer, Meshi Chavez, who will be performing. So that will be before the show on Saturday. And then on Sunday, our post-show event will be a talk back with the cast and the crew.
Wow, this is If you're out there, I hope you're listening because this is something you don't want to miss.
Thank you.
This is going to be incredible. So, Frank, do you published your work
Well, yeah.
where people can find it and purchase?
Not yet. No,
Not yet?
I'm just putting in the details. It's like, I guess I've reached the point where it's got to be perfect, but forget perfect, just
That's right.
good. You know, I'm up at that point right now.
I had a friend of mine who was Native American, and he was an inventor and all kinds of things, and he asked me to help him with some stuff. And when I was back in college, and he says, he's telling me, Dan, you know, my mother used to always say, you hear that if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. He says, she was so wrong. Because if I was going to wait for it to be right, I'd never done anything. He says, so he says, I learned to try it. If I fail, I learn from my failures and I keep going.
Right.
But to try it. If I don't try, I'll never know.
Yeah.
And it was some of the best advice anybody ever gave me. So,
That's great.
so we're going to break here and we're going to bring in two of the other actors. You want to tell me a little bit about who they
sure.
are?
Right. So Joaquin Lopez and Enrique Andrade will be performing an excerpt of Words That Burn. And it's an abridged excerpt because we do have three characters, as I mentioned to you. And so the actor who plays Lawson and Inada is not here tonight. But they will be reading some of the monologues by Stafford and by Gabaldon.
Well, that would be great. So if we can kind of roll out here and we'll do a quick change here of mics. I want to thank you, first of all, for coming and for this great project that you're putting on. Again, thanks, and we need to talk a little bit afterwards here.
Okay. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
We gotta rise up, rise up, rise up. They say it's to protect you while they try to dispossess you of the right to decide between wrong or right, to openly discuss what politicians hide. They want to keep their secret plans from the public eye. We gotta keep our fires burning, keep our spirits bright. We gotta rise up, rise up, rise up. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people. Money got no children, and bombs ain't for building. Killing ain't no way to make a peaceful day, as all of God's children can easily explain. We gotta keep our fires burning, keep our spirits bright. Stand up and speak for what we know is right. We gotta rise up, rise up, rise up. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people. I see days ahead. Kiss my children into bed. All across the planet I see that everything is fine. Yeah! Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people, against the war. Rise up, people. We got the power and the will, and we'll do it for our children. For the warmongers and the corporate whores in the history books with the dinosaurs. I claim my power, I claim my rights, and no dirty tricks are gonna change my mind. I'm gonna rise up, rise up, rise up. I'm gonna rise up, rise up, rise up. people against the war. Rise up, 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 people against the war. Rise up.
Hi, Dan.
Okay, we're back again, and we have our two other guests here, but before we do that, I wanted to make a couple of announcements. Veterans for Peace is going to be holding a couple of different events that are coming up, or we're sponsoring. Like one of the events that we're sponsoring is Tom Hartman, A Community of Friends, The Crash of 2016, his recent book. He's going to be Friday, May 2nd at First Unitarian Church on Southwest 12th and Main here in Portland. They're going to be community tabling from 6 o'clock to 9:30. Presentation will start at 7 to 9. Admission is $5 to $20, sliding scale, no one turned away. Another event that we're involved in is, Memorial Day will be coming up. And this is, of course, a day that many people are in their backyards doing barbecues, and the war is the farthest thing from their minds. But for veterans, Memorial Day means a lot of different things. Some people are talking about the heroism and various things about the war. So many movies are on television. But for Veterans for Peace, it is something about, well, we're not just talking about the people that have fallen on our side, but also all the victims of war. And this year we're doing something a little bit different. We had a great peace activist and labor singer, Pete Seeger, who passed away. So we're going to do a sort of thing called People's Peace Park and the Picnic. And it's going to be a Memorial Day from 1 to 4 p.m., Monday, May 26th, rain or shine. And the Peace Memorial, our Peace Park is down there just off the Steel Bridge as you come in off of, I think it's off of Oregon there. Oregon, Northeast Oregon and Northeast Lloyd Boulevard. There's a circle there, which we sort of adopted that piece of property and created a large peace symbol. And we've held a number of events there over the years. And I've asked a number of musicians to come and play as a tribute to Pete Seeger, and we're asking people to bring their lunch, and we can spend the day together and commemorate all the people that have gone, and hope that this is the end of war. That someplace here that we're going to find an end to this. Just another thing I wanted to mention is that. This is, when we were talking earlier about the 100th anniversary of various things, the 50th anniversary. Right now, in December 2014, will be the 100th anniversary of the 1914 Christmas Truce. Do you guys know about that? Mm-hmm. Christmas Truce was when both British soldiers and German soldiers fighting across the trenches with each other decided on Christmas Day that they were going to suspend the war. Mm-hmm. And they began to give gifts to each other, and food came out, shared, and played soccer in the field. Their officers were incredibly upset and threatened to court-martial the people that were involved, and then they went back into the war. Wow. But the real message of the story, and it's a French film, we hope to show that sometime here in the near future. We will be showing it in December, but one of the things is about the film is that if people in the middle of a war can say, we call a truce, and lay down their arms and find commonality with each other and share gifts, how come it is we, who haven't even faced the battlefield, can't put down our anger and our upset against the other for some grievance and find a way to make a truce and find a way to put down arms and not go to war? It's all a part of a project that's happening with Veterans for Peace, which we're working with on a national level, called Full Disclosure: The Truth About the Vietnam War. Right now, the Obama administration has put up some $23 million or more money to sort of I would say, rewrite the history of Vietnam, to redirect the message of what the war was about, rather than look at the tragedy of the war. They'll be handing out medals, creating this whole image that, what a great thing it was that we did, that we were there. When in fact, as veterans who were combat veterans in Vietnam, as long as we're alive, they're not going to tell a lie. We're going to continue telling the truth. So we have a part of various things that are going on that we're doing. We're starting a series of films on the Vietnam War, and I thought I had one of my films here, flyers, but we'll be doing number of films on Vietnam, probably a 2-day thing at the Fifth Avenue Cinema coming up here in May. I don't know if we have the dates pinned down, but if you go to the Fifth Avenue Cinema's website, you can pick that up, or to Veterans for Peace website. We will have that up so that people can see it. But we're going to have a number of anti-war films and Vietnam films. There's a movie called Sir No Sir, which is about the GI movement that was involved in the anti-war movement, and who were both those serving and those soldiers that had come home, who began to create what they called, GI coffee houses around bases throughout the country, and spoke to veterans, young soldiers that were just preparing to go to war. There was a huge movement against the war in Vietnam, which actually culminated in, I think, that veterans were refusing to fight. Many desertions, even at that time, they were fragging officers in Vietnam at the time that I didn't agree with. But there was a huge movement. Again, part of that's actually talked about in the book I just talked about, Hard Hats, Hippies, and Hawks, by Penny Lewis, which I talked about at the beginning of the program. You can get a bit of the GI movement history, the Chicano movement history, the women's movement history, the African American movement history. And as Cindy was saying, that Jim Lowenson is going to be doing art installation. I had Jim on the program here and a while back, and he's a Dorothy Lang award-winning photographer, and a piece that he did that won the award was actually a piece on boxers and going around the country. And in that process, he met Muhammad Ali. And he said he was sitting down with Muhammad Ali, and as they were going through these pictures and stuff, he said Ali was not paying attention to him too much, and he says, Muhammad, this is a picture in this studio, this particular gym. They have your picture. Another one, they have your picture. You notice there's a tribute to you in every one of these places. And he said, all of a sudden there's a tear coming down Muhammad's eyes. And Muhammad is, to me, a great hero, because here he probably did more for the anti-war movement than anybody, in that he refused to be drafted, and lost his title because of it, and stuck to his guns the whole time about why he didn't believe that black or people of color or anybody else should be going there to fight the white man's war, basically, And but it had a major movement. So what we're talking about here is the story of somebody who refuses, eventually becomes a conscientious objector. So I want to have you guys, first of all, tell me, let's go through your names again. So we got Joaquin Lopez.
Joaquin Lopez, yes.
And you are from, where did you come from?
I was actually born in Los Angeles. My father's from Mexico. My mother is Mexican-American. And I live here, I grew up here in the Beaverton area, in Portland area, since 1980, I guess you could say.
Okay, and then Enrique, you are from?
I'm originally from Mexico City, but I've been here over half my life, so, moss is growing on me, so.
And you're both actors?
Yes, sir.
And writers, too?
Joaquin is a writer. I'm more of a reader.
Reader, okay. And so you're going to tell me about the pieces that you're reading.
We're going to do an excerpt, an abridged excerpt of the sneak previews that we've been doing for Words That Burn. We had one in Hood River, Lake Oswego Library, and we're having one at the Garden Home Library on Monday.
Okay. So, who wants to go first here?
Yep. Here we go.
Okay.
It is war. They put us on a train and say,
Go.
A bell wakes up the engine as we move along past the crowd, and a child, one clear small gaze from all the town, finds my face. I wave. For long, I look back. I'm not a soldier, I want to say, but the gaze is left behind, and I'm gone. During the war years, we who openly objected said goodbye and went away to camp to prison. Some 12,000 of us of draft age went into the alternative service program called civilian public service. And some 5,000 were sent to prison, and some unspecified thousands went into non-combatant service with the armed forces. We did not want a gun. We did not want to die. Yet, we have killed a man, they say. Each one. Look down, sky. The gazing sun goes out. The lit of day goes down with doubt. What war is won today? We all have done our work. We sing,
I have not killed a man.
Not one today, for anything. Those of us who have objected openly found our country conquered overnight. Conquered by aliens who could shoot, who could shout on any corner or in any building and bring us down. Bring down on us wrath and hate, more intense than on any foreigner. There was a fellow named Hidalgo Herrera from Coyote, New Mexico, and he could speak a little English, and I asked him about his draft board. He said they asked him, "Why are you refusing to go to war?" And he said,
God don't like war.
"So, where do you go from there?" What could you ask next?
I think it's important for us to say that the characters we're portraying today is Guy Gabaldon, who is a Pied Piper of Saipan, a Marine, who captured over 800 Japanese prisoners, and William Stafford, who is portrayed by Joaquin, who was a conscientious objector and Oregon's poet laureate. So just wanted to make that clear for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a game to me. I didn't enjoy killing. The Marines were about to turn me down. I was a quarter-inch too short, but less than 100 spoke Japanese.
Some say you're the Pied Piper of Saipan.
The first night I was in Saipan, I went out on my own. I was always working on my own and brought back 2 prisoners using my backstreet Spanish and Japanese. My officers scolded me and threatened me with a court-martial.
Don't you ever do that. This is the Marine Corps. It's teamwork.
But I went out the next night and came back with 50 prisoners. I conned them into surrendering, and after that...
What the hell? Let the little kid go. He's getting results. There was a movie on your exploits. Hell to Eternity, 1960.
I had a lot of fun shooting it. Hollywood toned the story down. It gave me a sidekick. But that wasn't true. I always worked alone. And Jeffrey Hunter doesn't resemble me. He's tall with blue eyes. Me, I'm a short Chicano. Jeffrey was jealous that he didn't have my good looks. Híjole. I came from such a large Latino family that no one objected when, at the age of 12, I moved in with a Japanese family. They were my extended family. It was there I learned Japanese. We were all there, me, my buddies Lyle and Lane, Mr. and Mrs. Nakano. When we heard about this Pearl Harbor thing, we couldn't understand.
Your Japanese family was relocated to a detention camp in Arizona, and you went to Alaska and worked in a fish cannery until you decided to enlist in the Marine Corps at age 17.
The Japs, not the Japanese, bombed Pearl Harbor. My foster family, they were good Americans. I was not an interpreter. I went in to kill or take prisoners. If you didn't have cojones, you couldn't do it. Everybody I killed died hard. I did not enjoy killing. Freedom is not free. It costs an awful lot of blood.
We often fought fire in the company of state prisoners and servicemen, either not yet sent overseas or back here pending discharge. One bleak and frosty night, 3 of us sat hunched over a tiny campfire on a ridge above the fire line. I asked the wearer of the Purple Heart how he had received it. He said it was for the wounds he received while accounting for the lives of some vast number of Japanese. 53, he thought. Our companion was a prisoner, a Filipino doing the 15th year of a life term.
I killed a Jap too, but I guess it was out of season.
The wearer of the Purple Heart asked, "No fooling. Is that what you're up here for?"
That's what I'm up for. But if you think that's funny, here's a guy
And he indicated me.
who's up because he refused
I have not killed a man.
to kill Japs.
Not one today for anything. We began to build a fire line, or a cleared space, downhill, about 50 feet from the fire, which was still just a ground blaze and quiet from the night coolness and humidity. We built about 3/4 of a mile of line, working farther and farther from the fire as the day's heat allowed the flames to rise. And then we backfired into the burn. It was a beautiful sight. I could look up now and then and see, framed through a tangle of boughs, a chopper, his arms raised, his axe swinging. Or a tired packer, the curve of his back, a picture of weariness, bringing in water. Along part of our line, the cover was fir, incense cedar, and ponderosa pine, with underbrush of nutmeg and madrone. The pines and cedars were as much as 3 feet through at the base and 100 feet high. Our line held. By noon, we were patrolling, now and then attacking spot fires, and as midday wind came up, we sometimes had the breathtaking experience of seeing the fire crown in places within the burn and go roaring like a waterfall and spreading at runaway speed. The things we have seen on fire, men faint from exhaustion and be carried away on horseback like sacks of meal. United States soldiers on sit-down strike when the pack train with water failed to arrive. Men wall-eyed and trembling, shaken by an hour-long flight in terror before a runaway forest fire. Mexicans called out to fight fire and held without food or lights or guidance for 24 hours on the fire line, shivering in their shirt sleeves, dressed as they had been when picked up from the railroad work down in the valley.
I hate to use a race card, but it is so obvious. On seniority, I should have been promoted to corporal, but based on what I accomplished, I should have been gunnery sergeant. Promotions were passed out. None for me.
You were recommended for the Medal of Honor by our commanding officer. However, the Marine Corps initially downgraded the award to a Silver Star and then upgraded it to the Navy Cross, one medal lower than the Medal of Honor, just as the movie was released.
I don't think the Marine Corps ever awarded the Medal of Honor to any Chicano in World War II. It was only with a twinge of conscience that they upgraded my Silver Star to a Navy Cross, and to me that indicated they knew they had made a mistake. The fight continues. I don't want it. I enjoyed what I was doing. There was a time I wanted the Medal of Honor posthumously. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but I wanted to die for it. I'll give my life and show you. Many have wondered why I was so callous to the harshness of battle while only an 18-year-old kid. Being raised in the barrio every day was a fight.
Your friends in Boyle Heights said that when you weren't playing marbles with them, you were always picking a fight with somebody.
I was a 10-year-old in the ghettos of Los Angeles, shining shoes on Skid Row. Fighting in the Pacific tropical jungles and living in the East Los Angeles ghettos had a lot in common. You had to be one step ahead of the enemy or adios mother. You're surrounded and have no choice but to surrender. Come out, and you will not be killed. I assure you, you will be well treated. We do not want to kill you.
The arm is bayonet good, and the feet for marching. The eyes can lick over a blasted town and then read a menu. The voice can sing anthems for action and then pray. But the heart is not fit enough. It can't arm itself. It can't march. It can't even beat near a blasted town and then sing. The heart is rejected for military service and for essential civilian duty. What are you doing, heart? Heart, whose side are you on?
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was,
Yes, it was our
that was
pleasure.
amazing.